It's not every day we get a game that takes the world by storm, especially one that is a sequel to a long dormant franchise. This game may be the game that breaks my Diablo 4 addiction, as it's now consuming my mind while I'm at work, as I'm reflecting on the virtual choices I've made so far in this game, wondering if I've made the right choice or the wrong one. Hi, I'm Mason, and today on Amateur Game Review, I'm talking about Baldur's Gate 3. I did not expect this game to receive as much publicity as it has. It's been over 20 years since Baldur's Gate has had any relevance in the video game world. 2021's Dark Alliance doesn't count, as that game simply alluded to the name Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance and quite frankly was a pile of dog shit. And even though the public eye might be focused on a very spicy bear encounter, it at least gives Baldur's Gate 3 a chance to commercially succeed.
I am sickened, but curious.
Not that I'm worried about the game being a flop or anything, but because this game is tremendous. Hands down, one of the best RPGs I've played this year. I even went out of the way to purchase the early access version of Baldur's Gate, and I am not a fan of early access. I believe it has negatively impacted the video game industry for the last 10 years by allowing major publishers to release unfinished games, even when they're not using the early access label such as Fallout 76, but that's a rant for a different video. Let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is an RPG taking place in the Forgotten Realms, a world from the Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing game. The campaign takes place 100 years after the events of Baldur's Gate 2 and follows the player character who awakens on a mind flayer's ship and is infected by a mind parasite, which gives them some interesting telepathic abilities. As they're trying to find their way off the mind flayer's ship, they come across some other captives who have been infected by the parasite as well. All of them decide to form a party to escape and find a way to remove their new wormy friend.
Hi, how are you?
Eventually, the party crash lands the ship and wake up on a beach. After that, they're off to find the cure. I'm stopping the story synopsis right there because there is no way I can cover everything in Baldur's Gate 3. Also, the review codes were sent out late, and Zach wouldn't give me the day off to play the game. Downside of having your co-host be your in-real-life supervisor, I guess. There's so many side quests and choices and consequences to your actions with these side quests that will give each and every one of you a completely different experience. There's so many different ways to go about a quest, whether that's succeed or royally mess it up. It's incredible. I think the devs said the game will have 17,000 different endings, and obviously all of those are probably based off a few different endings, but all of the side quests and character interactions are what make those 17,000 differences possible. I said Baldur's Gate 3 takes place in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, but it's actually the closest video game to a real-life D&D session. Just by starting the game and seeing the character customization possibilities, that could overwhelm you with the amount of depth if you've never played D&D before. This is obviously what Larian set out to do, and they have outdone themselves and succeeded in trying to capture the authentic D&D experience. But they've managed to find a great balance between player freedom and the game having an impactful narrative and meaningful character interactions. I think what helps make these moments hold more weight is the presentation and the production values Baldur's Gate 3 has. The older Interplay games are top-down, with character portraits and dialogue text, and that's all still in Baldur's Gate 3. However, the camera can be zoomed in to see your party, as well as having more cinematic angles whenever you talk to these characters. Then, you have the detailed facial animations and damn good character models to make these moments seem more real. If you piss someone off, you feel as if you pissed them off. It reminds me so much of Dragon Age Origins, which obviously has some similarities to Baldur's Gate since they were both developed by Golden Era BioWare. I also played Dragon Age way before I ever played the classic Baldur's Gate games, so that's why it comes to my mind first. It's like Baldur's Gate 3 is the true Dragon Age Origins sequel, and that's not a bad thing, because we're obviously never going to get that no matter how good Dreadwolf could be.
I'm not sure what we expected, really.
So characters, story, and player freedom, absolutely amazing. But let's talk gameplay. This is where Baldur's Gate 3 might lose you. For starters, if you're not a fan of turn-based combat, then that'll automatically turn you away from the game. I'm not a big fan of it, but I can look beyond it. If that doesn't bother you, then the difficulty might. This game is hard, and there will be a lot of reading. Again, just by looking at the character creation panel, you have your class, subclass, specializations, buffs, and debuffs. So many different aspects to consider. It's not a game that you can just pick up and play. There are things to consider. Even in battle, there's so many possible ways for it to end. For example, an archer gets more damage if they climb up a roof and fire their bow from above, or you might find a destructible wall you can break through, or you use a frost spell to put out a fire. Again, so many different experiences that each player will have, and it makes it hard to talk about because your campaign will be different than mine. Then there's death. If a character dies, they don't get back up after the fight. You need a scroll to revive them, and if you don't have one, I guess you're carrying your friend's corpse to the nearest town. Also, just like D&D, you have dice rolls. Skill checks that require the roll of a dice. May the odds be in your favor, and good luck.
I am sickened, but curious.
Clearly, the gameplay won't be for everyone, but at the same time, I think it'll bring more players to tabletop D&D if they enjoy Baldur's Gate. Me, I am absolutely loving Baldur's Gate 3, if you couldn't tell from watching. This game is phenomenal. I cannot stress that enough. The amount of detail, customization, and possibilities make Baldur's Gate 3 one of the best role-playing games I've seen to date. If you're a fan of D&D, the classic Baldur's Gate games, Dragon Age, or the good old days of BioWare, or if you just like role-playing games in general, you need to get Baldur's Gate 3. In my opinion, if Zelda wouldn't have released this year, Baldur's Gate would have been the winner for Game of the Year.
She sounds positively demented.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, like and subscribe for more reviews. Our small channel has just hit the 2,000 subscriber mark, and we are so grateful for each and every one of you who gives our channel a chance. If you want, you can follow us on Instagram and X, to chat with us or just see some of the dumb things Zach decides to post. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.